on, what is it?
Halberd, maybe?
Well,
Forerunner of.
yeah, Dane axe is
Well, yeah, crescent in that case.
Dane axe or crescent axe are the most common used terms for it.
Dane axes are a slightly different shape. Dane
What?
axes are actually more like that head shape.
But why do we not have a pointed thing in the end of it, Johnny? As much as we enjoy beating each other up,
Also, because as far as we know, there's no pictorial evidence for it because we already have a pointed thing on it back. You don't need another one.
exactly. Is it one-handed or two-handed? Two-handed weapon. Can you tell me who would use it?
No idea.
No, usually Bellman. Pole armsman.
Higher ranking form.
Mr. Hayes, please carry on.
Do we have a bill here?
Luke, I don't suppose you're built in your car by any chance?
it's not now.
Can I move your cloak if I'm doing it? Another good example, since I'm coming into an army talk halfway through. Another good example of sort of the high rank, low rank kind of weaponry. This nice high ranking form designed purely for fighting. You wouldn't go tree felling with this. Whereas the build weapons are basically agricultural tools on a stick. That is what they're for. But they're effective. The nobility went, that works, I'll have one of them. But I don't want it to look anything like the peasants, so you come up with different designs, and you find that right the way through.
It would also be at this point, if he's going through the rich and poor things with build weapons that most gardeners still use. Builds today. I've walked past guys chopping down bushes like that is actually
Exactly the same. They haven't
exactly
changed
the
them much.
same.
I do hedge. During the winter at some of the places I volunteer, I do hedge laying. We still use bill hooks that hold very similar profiles to the historical ones that you might see on our encampment.
Well, some of the ones we've got at our encampment are modern ones with the edges round off.
Yep.
Again, you get the same thing here, the sort of rich man, poor man thing. Again, the most basic weapon you can get, stick with nails in it. That is pretty much it. You can pick it up on your way to muster, so you'd be armed with something. Again, the knights go, that's a very effective piece of kit.
Stick with heavy bit of metal.
Yeah, but we don't really want to look like a peasant, so you know, you change the design slightly. And these, again, both great examples of weapons that are designed to deal with mail. So if you've got a sword, cutting through mail is, as you'll probably see when you pick some up, going to be a bit tricky. This, quick whack to the knee, or you know, the arm or anything, that's, your mail's probably going to be fine. Gambus's probably going to be fine. Your knee probably isn't. And that's it, you're out the fight. And if you're fighting someone in mail, the odds are you want to take them hostage rather than actually kill them. So if you take them hostage, you can basically make their family pay to get them back, which they usually will do. Then you've got more money, they've got less money, and the head of their military is now sort of like got a broken leg, which may or may not heal well enough for him to fight again. So their leader's crippled and they're broke. And for every soldier they now can't hire, you can hire an extra one. So they're not going to give you any more trouble. Whereas if you kill him, his son will take over and they'll still have all their money and you won't have any of it. Yeah, and they'll be quite annoyed at you. And of course he's also probably related to you. The Norman nobility was incredibly interrelated. There were 5 major families and a few smaller ones. But this is why you'll find de Lacys everywhere in any camp you go to. They get everywhere, the de Lacys.
What is also a good thing to point out is if you see in John's left hand.
Yes, the differences in war club as well. These are Mesiowski war clubs, or this one is a Mesiowski war club. That's the records for that are from a Polish Bible, but they were sort of seen in various other bits of
The
illustrations.
Maciejowski Bible.
The Maciejowski Bible, yes. This is a Winchester, or that's what we call them, and this is taken from a design in the Winchester bestiary. Again, you'll see the sort of like this has got a wider head on it, whereas this is very much just baseball batty.
Yeah. Also, the Winchester ones were more directed at, if I'm not incorrect, Luke, more towards the religious side of things.
Winchester.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only other major difference between the two of them is that whereas the Maciejowski had continued with a couple of small nails on the top, the Winchester,
One big spike.
yeah, one big.
What's the origin of the religious thing?
I can't remember actually.
It's not that whole clergy using blunt weapons thing again, is it?
No.
Good.
I think it's just most of the depictions that we have of the Winchester being used would be
With
depictions of religious leaders. I think.
Fair enough.
Also, as John pointed out, is nobility fighting each other. It wouldn't be to death. You would be kind of, and you're now incapacitated. You ain't fighting anymore.
Yeah.
It would not necessarily be a case of take a fetch money. It would make you bankrupt. You bankrupt somebody. Like today, if you bankrupt somebody, they can't do jack. All of the 12th century is, that's a really good idea, but I'm fancy pretentious and I want more metal in my stuff.
Yep. Guess whose is whose.
Go on.
Peasants! Royo. I had to do
You've
it.
done this before, shush your mush.
Okay.
Ross.
Tiny bit.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Can you turn that off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Um,
Just telling him off.
No. It's on camera and everything.
difference.
I'll cut it.
No. A difference between knife and dagger is knife is a hunting knife. Again, it's a job tool.
Yep.
They'd be, obviously hunting boars, rabbits, deer, insert animal here. And it would be used as a hunting tool. But it also is a good second-hand tool. And dagger, however, is a killing tool. It's a case of, you've done something wrong, I'm going to take your hand off, I'm going to slit your throat. It's
I'm going to use it to get into that nice vulnerable bit of your armpit.
very
Or through your eye
very
holes in your face plate.
few people actually use their daggers as a primary weapon. In fact, I've never met anybody who's used a dagger as a primary weapon. It's usually a case of, it's here, slit your throat, bad peasant, none of you will do that again.
Yeah. Basically.
Considerably smaller. That
It's
is
a good
actually,
secondary weapon.
that is actually quite big as far as daggers go.
Yeah.
However, it's nice and heavy, but I prefer heavier weapons. A lot of people prefer lighter weapons, but I need to get to a lighter sword because my wrist physically can't take much more.
I like it.
Smaller one. You talk about smaller.
The smaller axes? No, we didn't get round to smaller axes.
Again, well, after you, sir, you.
Yep. This would be, again, it is just a single-handed axe. It needs cutting down. Yeah, it's a little bit long, this one. But this is more of a woodsman's tool. This one. This is again a tool for splitting wood, cutting down smallish trees. Because I wouldn't want to try a big one with it. Yeah.
Would you use it to break branches and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, that kind of thing. It is. This is more of a splitting axe than anything. Again, but it's also quite an effective weapon. Again, the upper classes saw them, and the upper class version of this would have a very similar head to that. Don't have one at the moment.
No, not
Luke's is the closest we've got.
Luke's is the closest we've got, but Luke's is currently being rehafted.
Yeah, it's been rehafted. It's also an Irish pattern.
We can, for sake of argument, you go, oh, I'd like an axe for chopping wood authentically
Yeah.
on the encampment. You can buy one. Don't try chopping wood with a reenactment safe axe.
No.
You will get nowhere.
And you will get shouted at.
By who first, you or by me?
Depends who catches them.
Dan will just laugh at you because
Yeah. Dan will laugh at you, then he'll tell us, then we'll shout at you.
more.
pretty much.
It is something I've seen people
Where did you
doing.
get the popcorn from? More.
Like he's
But
not
yeah.
this.
So the upper class version would have a head, again, very similar to that, but obviously smaller. So yeah, another example of a tool that's good for chopping down people as well as trees. Right, like the majority of them, there is, I think, only really
Swords.
one that has no peasant equivalent, and that is these. These were as much a status symbol as a weapon at this point.
I will cut your hair with this. Careful.
I'll cut his hair with this.
But say this is considerably sharper than that.
That's the point.
I shall fight back with my little.
The sword was, again, against male, not an absolutely brilliant weapon because it is a cutting weapon, and whilst they were sharper than earlier at the point than earlier swords, they still weren't thin and sharp enough to just go straight through male without stopping. They were very much a crack his knee, crack his elbow, knock him out, take all his money. Knights were effectively just very well organised muggers. Really, this is pretty much what they were. Thankfully they were all related and tended to leave other people alone the majority of the time, or just kill them.
Yeah.
Smack them in the face with the fox.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But these are, they're pretty much, again, they're the ultimate status symbol. They are hard to make, and the steel for them, it's only really in our period that the quality of steel is good enough to just make them as they are without having to pattern weld them, which is twisting or folding iron and steel rods together to put more carbon in. Again, they're surprisingly light. The balance is quite often around sort of there, which is what this is for, this is to get the weight down. They're quite good, they move around nice and easily, they're pretty strong, you can nearly bend them in half without even worrying about it. I still worry about it every time, but no, you can.
The other thing with swords is when you're talking to people, you're all adults or adultish. The financial equivalent of today's money would be about £40,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you're talking to a kid, a tiny child, it's like, you've seen every toy in Toys R Us, right? Yeah.
This costs more.
This costs more than that. Really? Yeah. Always when you're talking to people, remember who you are talking to.
Yeah.
You know, we can spout all the intellectual and big and important facts with all the fancy words, all the fancy palaver, because hey, you're all adults. You all have the idea of constructing sentences and all of that jazz. Obviously, a 12-year-old, 10, 12-year-old child isn't going to know how much 40 grand is. It scares me when I think of how much 40 grand is, and that is now a life-changing sum of money.